Batman has been a staple of live action pretty much forever, actually since the 60s, and he's a character that has a ton of variety in his characterization throughout different live action adaptations and even cartoons and comic books, despite having a lot of, similar core traits that have been going pretty much forever. One of the interesting things about Batman is that he is always tied with his arch nemesis, the Joker. It doesn't matter if we're looking back at the 60s Adam West show or we're looking forward to future adaptations. People always ask, where is the Joker? What's he up to? How is he connected to Batman? And that's something that was no different in The Batman, Matt Reeves' new recent movie starring Robert Pattinson, Zoe Kravitz, and more, because everyone was kind of wondering, is the Joker going to be in this movie? What's going on? And spoiler alert, today we are taking a look at a deleted, rejected scene from the movie featuring none other than Barry Keoghan's Joker. Now, the interesting thing with this clip is I can't show the entire 5-minute thing because copyright is a bitch, and WB, despite not feeling fit to include this in the actual movie, which I think was a Matt Reeves decision more than WB, still really wants to make money off of it. So it's being claimed left and right on the internet. I have no idea how some people are getting away with showing the whole thing, but I'm not them, despite how much I reach out to WB. You guys never answer the emails. I don't know what's going on.
They keep sending you the wrong size shirt. You'll
send me another fandom box with like a really weird backhanded compliment about how fat I am by sending me a smaller shirt. It's what it is, we all have complicated relationships. Maybe they're my Joker. This scene begins with Batman visiting an inmate in Arkham Asylum, or Arkham State Hospital here, and you can see Batman inserting a actual folder of crime scene evidence into a slot so that it can be viewed by the recipient, and this is none other than Matt Reeves' Joker. One of the things I find so interesting is how intentional every movement is in this scene, because as you can see, Joker takes his sweet time getting over to the edge of his cell so that he can actually look at this information Batman's gotten him. It's almost like he's lost in thought at the beginning and then kind of snaps out of it and starts to slowly saunter over to where Bruce is standing.
Almost our anniversary, isn't it?
There's a serial killer. I want your perspective.
First anniversary is paper.
Despite Batman being interested in Joker's perspective on the Riddler killings, which is pretty much the focus of the Batman, Joker's more interested in Batman himself, which definitely lines up with a lot of the versions of the character we've seen. But one thing that you'll notice from the footage I showed and these pictures is that this is a Joker that is much more scarred, much more graphic than previous live-action ones that we might have seen in the past, and there are a lot of reasons for that. In a recent interview with Variety, Matt Reeves actually went on to discuss a little bit more of the Barry Keoghan Joker that we didn't really get to see, and I really pray I'm saying his name right because I've heard it pronounced Keoghan, Keegan, and Kogan, so I went with the traditional Irish pronunciation, but in an interview with Variety, Reeves said it's like Phantom of the Opera. He has a congenital disease where he can't stop smiling, and it's horrific. His face is half covered through most of the film. It's not about some version where he falls into a vat of chemicals and his face is distorted, or what Christopher Nolan did where there's some mystery to how he got these scars carved into his face. What if this guy from birth had this disease and he was cursed? He had this smile that people stared at that was grotesque and terrifying. Even as a child, people looked at him with horror, and his response was to say, okay, so a joke was played on me. And this was his nihilistic take on the world. This is a very different type of Joker. This is not exactly the one we've seen in the past in something like the Dark Knight movies. Obviously, it's a different canon. It's also not the exact one we've seen in the comics, even Nicholson. None of these interpretations are quite what his Joker was going to be. And I think that's why this scene is so fascinating. It's also worth noting that by mentioning their 1-year anniversary, this does imply that Batman actually put Joker away in Arkham Asylum. He was institutionalized or apprehended by Batman about a year before the events of The Batman, at least according to this scene. Now, it remains to be seen if this will still be canon or not, but spoiler alert for those who, I guess, have not seen this movie, because I don't know why you're here, but please run away now. This character is still shown in the actual in-continuity ending of the movie in Arkham. So it's worth mentioning that this still could be true. It still could have been a year since Batman put Joker away, or this proto-Joker that isn't quite Joker yet, but we won't know that until this character shows up again, if at all, which I'm pretty sure they will, but Matt Reeves said don't expect it right now.
You think I could offer this stuff?
Don't you?
You have pictures.
As Joker begins to sit down and take a look at the folder, he opens it very slowly and again methodically. This is a folder that's been laid out by Batman to essentially show him what's going on with the Riddler. One thing that's worth noting and paying attention to on this folder is that there are multiple paperclips on the outside of the folder at the beginning of this scene. This is something that we're going to want to keep track of and pay attention to because it will come up again later. Now, this is a little bit of the scene that I'm going to summarize. It is all on YouTube, Vimeo, and other places, but Joker starts to read this file and look at it, and we get a better look at how messed up his hands actually are. You can see this congenital skin disease in his hands with scabs and blood and other stuff, and it's worth noting that he is very fascinated by the Riddler's work, pointing out that Riddler likes his own puzzles and has been very, very methodical and meticulous in the planning of his kills. It's almost like he's been planning this for his entire life, which interestingly enough actually does turn out to be the case with this character in the full movie.
I know who he is.
Who is he?
He's a nobody. Wants to be somebody.
After remarking on who these victims actually are, being the mayor, the commissioner, etc., Joker then points out to Batman that this person, this Riddler, must have some ambitions because he's trying to aim up. Batman then asks if Joker believes this is a political motive, to which Joker pretty much dismisses his idea immediately, saying, no, this is very, very personal. It goes way, way back.
Why is he writing to me?
Maybe he's a fan of yours? Or maybe he's got a grudge against you too. Maybe you're the main course.
I think it's interesting because Joker does reveal some things to him throughout this scene, not enough to actually identify who the Riddler is, although there are hints that he might know exactly who he is, but he helps just enough to get Batman on his way as a detective, while also playing off of that attachment with Batman.
Any theories?
Not yet.
Really? You're normally so ahead of the curve.
While Matt Reeves did mention that his Joker, Barry Keoghan's Joker, is different, it's worth mentioning that there are several key similarities that pretty much every Joker shares. One of those is the ability to get under Batman's skin and make him think, make him question himself, his motives, why he is there, and even, in some instances, question his own character. That's actually what the Keoghan Joker begins to start doing, which you're going to see here, and I think that this is where their interaction starts to break down, but also simultaneously become very, very interesting.
This is very upsetting to you.
Let's get back to him.
Why? You are so much more fun.
I'm not here to talk about me.
What are you here to talk about?
I want to know how he thinks.
You know exactly how he thinks. Have you read this file? You two have so much in common. Oh, you're afraid he makes you look soft.
You're wasting my time.
Now, this is where the scene actually gets complicated, and everybody had to take out their best Dark Souls lore sleuthing goggles and magnifying glasses to actually look deeply at this. What I'm showing you is the folder that Batman retrieves with all of the case file information on the Riddler. Now what I'm about to show you is the folder that he handed him originally. What's interesting about this, and originally this folder appeared to have 4 paperclips on it, but now when Batman retrieves it from Joker, it only looks like it has 2, maybe a maximum of 3 paperclips on it, but not the 4th. It's a little hard to tell because it is in motion, so it's a little hard to tell, but it appears to be missing one of its paperclips. Now, I know that some people were saying, oh, this is kind of like Probably Joker took that to use it. Here's the thing with that, it is very, very possible that that's what happened, especially because they do focus on this shot of Batman taking the folder back. But at the same time, I kind of have to ask myself what the purpose of that would be. Joker only then appears in one scene at the very, very tail end of this movie. And here's the thing, it has nothing to do with an escape attempt. It has nothing to do with a paperclip or him using anything to break out of his bonds, I guess, or out of his cell or anything like that. So here's the problem with that. Let's say that they brought this idea back in a future movie, in the Batman 2 or 3. That's a pretty long time to wait on that paperclip. That's like a Chekhov's gun type thing where you kind of have this gun that has to go off at some point, otherwise why is it there? And here's the issue with that. We're talking a scene in the middle of the Batman 1 needing to have payoff either in Batman 2 or 3 much later on, and it's a tiny hidden detail that is never emphasized or shown. I almost lean more towards this being a continuity error. If there was anything resembling or pointing to Joker using this in the final scene, I would say, oh, that was intentional, very much a Matt Reeves cinematography, this is cinema moment of hidden. But I don't really think that that's the case with this because there's just no payoff to it in this movie, and also no payoff to it could really make much sense in a future movie since they didn't even emphasize this. It would be a very, very odd thing to go back and say, oh, but do you remember the paperclip from that scene? He took it when they didn't even show it in his hand or anything like that. You would think that at the very least they would emphasize that point in this scene if it was going to appear again after this movie.
I think somewhere deep down, you're just terrified. Because you're not sure he's wrong, huh? You think they deserved it.
One of my favorite parts about this interaction between Batman and Joker with this scene is just how it plays out. Yes, you obviously have a very interrogation-like setting in the Arkham State Hospital, Arkham Asylum, but it's not quite as clear-cut as this. This is an interaction between Batman and Joker that seems very familiar, one-sided, but still friendly enough. This is two characters that know each other, which I think is very interesting, and it remains to be seen if that's something that we'll actually see down the line, or if they will start to establish those connections between these characters as they go on. Because I think it's really interesting to have this Hannibal Lecter type Joker, almost a Silence of the Lambs comparison I've seen a lot of people making, interacting with this early Batman, but they're still very familiar with each other. I partially think that that might be, along with pacing, one of the reasons that this scene was ultimately cut, because it is really cool to see that familiar relationship. But I think a lot of times people want to see how that relationship is formed between these two characters, or how it came to be. That's something we've gotten to see in pretty much every other live-action adaptation of Batman and Joker's relationship, mostly, except for the Batfleck and Jared Leto Joker one, which is actually criticized for that very point. So I kind of wonder, looking at it, if that was part of the reason Matt Reeves cut it along with the pacing, because where this would fall in the film before Batman has any idea who Riddler is, it really does kind of come off as a side quest, a 5-minute side quest where Batman goes out of his way to ask people about the Riddler and what they think. Overall, I'm very torn and conflicted on this scene because I personally think that both Barry Keoghan and Robert Pattinson did a good job in this scene, but I go back and forth on whether or not I would have wanted to actually see it in the full movie. There are a couple of things, like I said, pacing issues. This might be a little weird to randomly take a trip to Arkham Asylum, then come back, then he never talks to Joker again, and then he shows up in the final scene. But also, not only that, there is also the issue of their meeting. Yes, this does line up well with some classic comic storylines to say, like, oh, early Batman put early Joker away, and then Joker starts to devolve more and more over time as Batman evolves, and then you have these two characters that are sort of opposites of each other, playing off of each other for the remainder of their lives, right? I understand that too, and the acting was well done. But at the same time, between the pacing issues and also the fact that we never actually get to see the iconic meeting of Batman and Joker again in live action, when that was actually one of the things criticized, like I said, about the Snyderverse version, where we kind of had to jump in somewhere down the line where they already knew each other. And a lot of people do want to see how Batman and Joker start to connect and play off of each other. I think that some of those things might have been a little bit of an issue for fans with this part of the movie. It also doesn't help that even though I personally have the attitude of a movie should be as long as it has to be to convey its point well and be a good movie, a lot of people don't really love or care for 3-hour movies, and some of them have very, I guess, worthwhile points, like just not having enough time for that. So when you already have this movie stretching out to about 3 hours and then you're talking about adding in even more, it really does make sense for this scene to actually be pulled out of the movie. It's just too bad that it was so well done, because if it had been a poor Joker-Batman interaction, I think it would have been a lot more like, who cares, this got pulled. But because it was done with so much heart and conviction between these two characters, and almost felt like it could have come out of a full movie like The Dark Knight that focused on this relationship, it almost comes off a little bit like a missed opportunity to not see it. So I really go back and forth on whether I would have wanted this or not, and I'm very, very interested to hear what you think in the comments down below. Would you want this scene? Would you ever want a director's cut of the Batman, I guess, with this scene included in the runtime? Are you glad it was deleted? What did you think of this Joker? I know many people thought the very unconventional skin disorder and all these other things with the congenital issues was very odd and different, and some people, don't like the idea of it so far. I'm very interested to hear what you think down below. To me, this is a Joker that, like Matt Reeves said in some interview that, he's given a ton of them, this is a Joker that is not yet quite the Joker, so I'm very open to what they want to do with him. But it's also very, very different, and I could see how maybe some people would be hesitant about that. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Please be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this video and subscribe for more content. This took me quite a while to actually break down in a quality way, so I hope that you enjoyed it. And this is one of my favorite series to work on, Rejected Media, where we talk about rejected pitches that never made it off the ground, canceled projects, deleted scenes I've been including in here as well. So the sky's kind of the limit on this stuff. I have a ton of fun with it and seeing what could have been. Interested in your thoughts. Have a fantastic day, and as always, everyone, stay shui.